Fans, we are live on the flagship show of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast Empire. My name is Jack Kilby at No Gimmicks Guy on the socials, and I'm pleased to welcome a man who has had just an amazing career in the professional wrestling business, stemming from WCW, ECW, WWE, TNA, and now the new startup great Maple Leaf promotion here in Canada. I would be talking about none other than Mr. Johnny Swinger. Johnny, thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Jack. Pleasure to be here.
Before we get into a deep dive of your career, I thought I'd ask right off the hopper. You wrestled on the Georgia Dome show, the highest drawing, highest attended Nitro ever for WCW, and I know you've wrestled Goldberg at least a couple of times on TV included. I just wanted to get your thoughts as to his recent retirement match and the controversy that seems to have sprung up around it. Do you think he got a proper send off, or was there something fishy there with the way it was handled?
Well, Jack, I didn't see it, but of course you hear everything, and like you said, you hear the controversy of it all, which is really the baseline of our profession. It's all about controversy and getting people talking. And if everyone's talking about it, then somebody did something right. As far as Bill is concerned, I was probably one of his first matches. I actually think the first week he started having matches down at the Universal Studios, I was one of them. So I know him going all the way back then. He was always a nice guy and just an impressive looking person just right off the bat. Everything I heard, and even to this day, today as we're speaking, I heard it's the best match that Goldberg ever had. So to me, that's a credit to him wanting to put forth the best performance that he could, and also to the individual Gunther that wrestled him. You know, it takes two to tango. So everything that I've heard between the two of them, they put on a heck of a match. Now, as far as the details of, like you said, I heard maybe they cut him short on a promo or something like that. I actually, in my experience, I find that hard to believe, because those people got everything written down to the second. Nothing goes out there, that's off the cuff anymore. It used to be like that, but when I was there 20 years ago, you say this word followed by this word followed by this word, and it's going to take this much time. So that's the way they do it there. So, like I said, people are talking about it, so that's a good thing. I'm sure Bill got an unbelievable pay for that match, and that that's kind of what you're in it for. It's fun to do it, but it's even funner to get paid, and I can't imagine how fun it is to get paid like these guys do for these individual matches. Like it's like a boxing fighter out of Vegas or something, where they're but at least they know going in they're not really going to try to kill each other or make it look like they are. But it's once again, it's just, if the people liked it, there's always going to be some people that don't like it. But overall, what I heard was pretty positive.
Yeah, well, it's certainly. I think you're right. I mean, some people will complain about anything, but I thought the match. I agree with you. I think it was one of the hell. They went 20 minutes, and there was some Zabada in there, but I thought it was one of the best matches Goldberg ever had. But before we leave that topic, though, I noticed when you worked him, particularly one of the first syndicated matches where you were in the ring. He comes in. You do a little bit of a showboat for the camera. He speared you really hard. Boom! That jackhammer. Da da da. Did you find Bill to be stiff in the ring when he did those sequence of moves? Because I got to be honest, the spear, and I mean you're in tremendous shape, very thick at the time. It looked like it was a serious move.
I remember that match, and that was a match that, like you said, he was already on television and running people over on Nitro when we did that one. And trying to remember back to 1997, if he would have broke a rib or something like that, I would remember it. And I don't remember anything being any more heavy with that than anything else I'd come across in my career. It's hard to fake a 285-pound NFL lineman who just got into it. You know what I mean? They told him, run at these guys as hard as you can. And then us as professionals, I tell people it's like trying to time a car coming at you. You know what I mean? You can take some of the brunt away if you're skilled and know when to kind of get off your feet just as he hits it. It's like a collision. You know what I mean? You can, but I don't remember it being too heavy all these years later. And so many other people have used that move over the years. I think Bill is one of the most copied people ever, because between that, the spear and my good friend Rhino, the gore, that makes sense because he's a Rhino, but everyone's doing that, man. Even the women are doing the move now. So it's like, who the first guy that made it famous, though, that's, to me, that's what it's all about. And I don't remember it being too much. And man, he picked me up after that like a feather, whether I helped him or not. You know what I mean? And I had heard he almost dropped Undertaker years ago, but once again, Taker's 290 and, I was 205 at the time. So there's a big difference. And he took care of me. And when I wrestled him before that, the match I had with him before he went on TV, that actually had time. I remember that being like a 6 or 7 minute match. And he was really what you call green, like not even knowing where the TV cameras, nothing. And I don't remember anything from that being too much. It was my job to work with it, work around it, do whatever I have to do to make him look like a wrestler.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we'll get into just the high level work that you've done for a number of decades now. But just to rewind the tape for a sec, when did you have a particular epiphany or moment where you decided that you wanted to give this business a shot full time? Like, did you say at this point, I'm going to be a wrestler, or how did that develop? I know you have a family lineage in the business, but if you could talk about that, please.
No, there was never any doubt. For whatever reason, I thought when I was a little kid, when I saw this on TV, I really believed I could do it. I didn't know if I was going to grow up to be a big person, or most of the wrestlers were really big guys in the early to mid 80s, as you can remember. But for some reason, and even as I was getting a little older and going into high school, I still wasn't a big guy, but I watched the guys that were smaller at the time, and Terry Taylor and people like that, and Shawn Michaels when he was with the Rockers, and Marty, and those are the guys that I watched and I believed that I could do that just like those guys. So there was never any I planned it out from the beginning. I didn't go tour a college like my kids are doing now. I didn't think, well, what's my plan? And I don't suggest this to anybody. Don't do what I did, but there was no plan B or C. To this day that I'm talking to you right now, I'm still fully enthralled in this business.
In terms of, I know you've done some training yourself, and we hear a lot about the old school training methods. And when I read that you were trained by Ron Hutchinson and Sweet Daddy Siki to an extent, I found that to be that was really a Cadillac of a training program. Did you find that it was in the old school sense as physically taxing and really prepared you for what was to come?
I really was surprised when I started the training. You can't anticipate how grueling something is until you actually do it. And back then it wasn't publicized a lot. Nothing was online yet. It wasn't something you would sample, but I just knew that I was going to do whatever it took and take whatever punishment was necessary. And right off the bat, yeah, they didn't mess around, man. They wanted people in there that were serious about making a career out of it. They weren't interested in having fans come in and pay for a weekend or do a fantasy camp or anything like that. It was a professional camp designed to put people into it as a profession, and that's what I was there for. And as you know, I'm the smallest name that came out of that. You got Edge and Christian and Trish Stratus and Joe Legend, all these, so many people that went through that training camp. Ron Hutchinson was just put into this Hall of Fame in Iowa for trainers. So that just lends the hand of, how big and, that camp was. And I think even to this day, they got some descendants of that in Toronto. Rob Fuego continued it on. I think someone else even took it over from there. So it's a pretty historical training camp.
And we hear a lot about training now on the national stage, the WWE methodology, the Performance Center, and how they're really moved away from the traditional methods, which produced so many great talents, to a more cookie cutter sort of method, grabbing great athletes and plugging them in. Oh, you can be a wrestler, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we're seeing a lot of the downfalls of that in terms of, a handful of really bona fide draws, even in WWE. What are your thoughts on that current model of the WWE way and grabbing folks that really, a lot, not all, don't have the passion and love of the business that, say, you and your contemporaries did?
Well, I know who's down there. Terry Taylor and Shawn Michaels and Fit Finley and guys like that. Norman Smiley. You couldn't find better people to be in those positions. To, even if you took somebody with very little background, those would be the guys that. But like you said, things have gotten faster. They're doing a lot more athletic moves in the ring, and so much that a lot of guys are getting injured before they can ever get them out there to try to, make something out of them. And then they're just kind of washed out after that and never seen or heard from again. I know from being there, you do what you're told, and I'm sure the orders are coming up from corporate. This is what we want, and this is how we want it done. And if you don't do it, we'll just get somebody else. It's interesting because I myself, I wasn't like some great athlete like Braun Breaker. You know what I mean? I just really wanted to. So I became the athlete that I needed to become to do it the way it was done at the time. Now, if I was getting in it now, I couldn't go over the top rope to the floor and hope somebody catches me and hope everything it's just too much for me to. It's like a totally different ball game now. And I give anyone credit that does what I did watching that, thinking, man, I could go do that. Like, man, you're taking your life in your own hands on any given night. That's the case with just basic moves. And now you're really adding a lot of height and momentum and there's metal around the ring. You just don't know. So I think just the TV, as it goes on, there's just like more and more and more. The guys in the 60s didn't come off the ropes, and then the guys in the 70s started coming, and then they started coming off the top rope. So, but at some point here, we're going to get where how much more can you do? You can kind of run out of, I think it's getting pretty close. Even though I don't watch everything, very rarely do I see something that I haven't seen before. It's like, okay, how do you top that? I mean, some of these moves they do are so unreal. And I know Terry Taylor's not down there telling the guys, try to flip 2.5 times before you land, because that's just not. He's a guy of psychology and tell you why you're doing something and make it mean something. That way you're taking physical risk for a reason and not just doing a bunch of moves and stuff. So I know all those guys, their mentality and how they teach. So I don't know what they're doing down there now, but I know what they're doing on TV. It's unbelievable. But a lot of people are getting injured before they could get a real break. Do
you think that the craft is compromised somewhat by the lack of WWE has cut down dramatically on house shows, and there's not really the opportunity to really work out things before you're thrown on TV, and you're we hear this a lot with the female talent, rightly or wrongly, but we also hear it about the men that really the first time they're trying a promo or a move or something on a big stage, it's right on TV. Do you think that the business has been hurt by let alone the death of the territorial system, but a cut down on events that aren't televised?
I definitely do. Yeah, there's nothing like doing it in front of a crowd over and over and over again. That's how you know what works and what doesn't. And not you can't try out stuff on live TV and pay-per-view, which is what it's become. It's become a television show with special events that are built to every month. And no, they don't. You can do this every day in a training center at that performance center, but it's not the same as doing it in front of a crowd. Even a small crowd, you'll learn a lot more about timing and what makes people react and what doesn't. So how do you know? And then you just get out there on Monday Night Raw and go, well, let's see how this goes. And if it doesn't go good, you're the one that's going to get the blame. And like I said, they got a whole bunch of other people chomping at the bit to get that opportunity. So it's very difficult from what I see. It was never easy to get it, but I think it's the hardest now, especially to get a TV position.
Yeah, and one of your many strengths in the ring, it appears that you're able to, whatever the crowd is responding to or not, you can make adjustments on the fly like that to get the match over. And it seems now that we're going to go to X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, and those adjustments aren't made. I think it ultimately hurts the entertainment value of the match. Is that something that when you were training guys and gals or working with them on the independents, is that something that you passed along?
Yeah, actually, doing the independent matches now, the people that I'm in the ring with, they weren't trained that way, so they don't know how to do that. So I can't call a match in the ring if they can't follow it. So it is difficult. So my remedy for that personally is to keep it as simple as possible. Tell that little story and get the people into it. And there's 5 or 6 other matches out there. You don't need to do everything for your match, but TV is just one match after another where it's got to be more and more and more. And how much more can you do? I mean, just before it's the big giant choke slam when the guy gets up from it. Well, that didn't hurt. What do you got to do to hurt this guy? And then that's everybody. It's not just a guy like the Barbarian or something. It's every guy that's on there kicks out after every move. And I'm like, my gosh, what is it going to take to beat somebody anymore? It's kind of scary to think how far it'll go. I just hate to see people get injured in one night and can never do it again. Just doing the basic style will wear you down over years. But it's like slide in there, do everything you possibly can, and hope somebody gets a glimpse of it and gives you a big time opportunity. So.
First, got a ton of fan questions that have been sent to me as well. But Matthew's asking if you'd be interested in doing an autobiography, a book.
100%. Tell them to give me a call. I'm looking for that now. I don't know if anybody would want to do that, but I'd be willing to do it. Yeah, I'm at a little over 30 years now. So if someone thinks that that would be a good product, I'd be glad to do something like that.
Well, at the end of the interview, we'll be sure to provide all your contact points. Another fan sent me a question on social media asking about your thoughts on the use of, because you went through an era where celebrities were used in the business, albeit in a really different way, with the exception of maybe, I don't know, Karl Malone working in the ring. But now it seems that WWE, again in particular with Travis Scott and the latest Jelly Roll deal where he choke slammed one of the Paul brothers there, it seems to be taking on a whole different sort of aspect in terms of how celebrities are used now, aside from getting the eyeballs on the product, but being a wrestling traditionalist and an old school guy yourself. How do you feel about that metamorphosis from an attraction on the card, but not, involved in actual physicality, except very limited to what we see today?
Right. Well, that word celebrity is pretty vague. You can just because someone's a singer doesn't mean we're portraying a fight and a struggle and a match. So if they're not like Karl Malone, like you said, he's a huge professional athlete that could probably beat the heck out of a lot of people. So to me, that's believable someone like that, or Kevin Green when he came in, he was playing football. Steve Mongo McMichael, that's what we call believable, that this 290-pound lineman probably could cross over and, lock horns with a wrestler. But I think, the celebrity thing has gotten to where just because someone's known for doing something non-physical, I don't know that they should be beating up the wrestlers just to get views, because then what's that? You want them to enhance your wrestlers, not go, oh man, did you see that wrestler get beat up by the rapper? I just don't see where that's a positive long-term business. When they had Mike Tyson there, geez, everyone knows if he punches you, it's over with, whether you're a great wrestler or not. So to me, that's realistic. And I still think we're trying to make it as realistic as we can. Even just doing all those moves and stuff, guys are, selling it and stuff like that. But I don't know. Once again, I've heard the jelly roast, and I don't know who he is. I guess I'm too out of touch. I even asked my kids; they didn't really know who he was either. But there's a lot of people out there that are really known that I don't know who they are. But if I had to go to TV tomorrow and do a spot with him, I'd be pretty meticulous about how that was going to go, because he's just not a professional. I did see the thing where, was it Cody Rhodes got smacked in the ear by I don't, and I heard of the guy, Travis Scott, but to look at him, I'm like, man, if I get a hold of that guy, it's all over for him. He's not doing nothing to me. You know what I mean? He's not Mike Tyson or, a big ex-NFL guy like Goldberg or somebody that can just cross over and make it look like it's, it makes it look more phony to me, that it's just, we're setting this up to make it look like I just don't think we should do that at the professional TV level. But I guess it's all about publicity and views and clicks and all that stuff that I don't know anything about. I was excited to be wrestling on the Superstation. Now we got YouTube, and the guy wrestled Friday night. It's on YouTube today. I'm like, what do I know, right? I'm like, I wasn't expected to be on TV. I thought it was a spot show.
I couldn't agree with you more. Speaking of the Superstation, you debuted about 95 in WCW, and you were like all over syndicated television. You literally wrestled a who's who of the time. How did that come about? And when you signed with the company, was it a per appearance? Did you have a contract? And did you expect to get used as liberally as you really were?
Yeah, it was around 1995. I was wrestling out in Winnipeg, Canada, for Don Callis and the guy named Tony Condello. They broke in Piper, and he's still running to this day. And they were these death tours to Northwest Territories, over to Frozen Lakes, all that jive. And believe it or not, I was happy to be there because we were wrestling every night. But it was pretty grueling. But you always have it in your mind, I'm going to be there someday, one way or another. I really believed I could do it. And I just got a call out of nowhere when I was on one of those tours from Scott D'Amore. Never met him, never heard from him. I was barely 20 years old, and we're about the same age. And he was already in there doing what they call TV extra work now, and got in really favorably with him to a point where he was actually booking in the extra talent, the TV extras, so to speak. And he asked me if I'd be interested in doing television for WCW. And I jumped on it. I was like, man, can you get me out of here this weekend? Right. But that's how that got started. And he brought me down there with a group of guys, Terry Richards, who went on to become Rhino, who's one of my best friends to this day. So me and him would go down there with Scott would book 6 or 8 of us to go down to Atlanta Center Stage to do 2 days of TV, and then usually there was one arena show, and then there were the extended Orlando tapings out of Disney MGM. And I did that for about a year and a half. And every time I went, it was always very positive. Like they'd give me matches with, Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko, and the guys 7-8 minute matches where I really had a good chance to, look good. My job right there was to be making these guys look good. And they gave me a lot of great guys to work with that let me look good too. And that just got me more in favor with the office at the time. Paul Orndorff was in the office, Terry Taylor, and they were big backers of mine. At that point, when like you said, I was just being paid by the night. And around 1997, about 2 years in, that's when J.J. Dillon called me, and I wasn't expecting. I was hoping for it, but I did start thinking, this is probably what I'm going to be doing, but I'm just going to keep doing it because I want to do it, And J.J. called me and said, we'd like you to be available to us full time. And I said, man, I'll be there. I was living in Buffalo, New York at the time. I said, I can be in Atlanta next week. And that's how that got rolling. I started with a pretty good weekly guarantee for the first year. And then I got a new contract that gave me bonuses. So I'm one of the few people that never say anything bad about WCW. That was my big break. They took care of me and treated me the best. Not that other places treated me badly, but to be as young as I was, I only had 3-4 years of experience. They treated me like a professional, just like anybody else, and paid me well. And even when I didn't wrestle, I didn't have to worry about. I didn't have to go get another job or something. So they really took care of a lot of the talent. So it was a great run for me. I'm glad I got to do that because then it springboarded me to be able to do other things, being known from that.
Yeah, and it seemed if you listen to the commentary of those TV matches, they I think they, unlike some other talents, they went out of their way to present you as a great athlete, looks like $1 million, credible threat. So I think it's clear they really saw something in you, obviously almost from Jump Street. I mentioned that you worked a who's who of WCW at the time. I'll just go through a couple of the names. The Giant, Nasty Boys, Chris Jericho, X-Pac, Eddie Guerrero, Conan, Harlem Heat. Do you have any favorite opponents or matches or memories from that time frame?
Really enjoyed wrestling Jericho because I met him out in Canada before this all started. Him and Lance Storm were on those tours that we did out in West Canada. So he liked me and was willing to make a good match with me. There weren't too many people that I can think of that were hard to have matches with. The Giant is what he was. He's going to choke slam you, and you know what I mean? But he took care of me, and I never got hurt on a match. And all those names you just mentioned were just really highly skilled pros. So they knew what to do, and there wasn't any worry about anything going wrong or anything. I just listened to those guys. They tell you the way they wanted to go, and I trusted in them. Some of these guys I watched on TV when I was a kid, I'm wrestling Greg the Hammer Valentine. I'm not going to go up to him and say, hey, Greg, what do you think if I do this? I said, sir, I'm here for whatever you need. And I just know it's going to be a good match. And that was it was a pleasure to get to wrestle with all those guys. And something that you mentioned too about the color commentary, I'm glad you brought that up. Bobby Heenan was one of my idols when I was a kid. And when I got to WCW, after I got under contract, he was announcing a lot of my matches, and I never met him. The announcers were in a different area. They weren't in the dressing room. And I never met Bobby, but I started noticing on my matches he'd really push me on the color, and so it wasn't like we were friends or anything. And I was like, well, I wonder if maybe because he's really making me sound like I could become more than what I was being used at the time. And several years later, I saw him at a fan fest, and he had gotten to that point where he couldn't talk anymore. And I went up to him and I shook his hand. I said, Bobby, do you remember me, Johnny Swinger? And he nodded. I said, I really appreciate what you did for me. And I know you're being truthful because I didn't even know you, you know what I mean? So I know, and I take that as a humongous compliment that you would think that I was good enough to put over like that. And he didn't have to. So all that stuff really helps. And for the young guys out there, if there's anyone watching this, if you get a shot at TV, go talk to the announcers before your match. Give them something to, because it all helps you get over no matter what you're doing out there. Give them some background on you, where you came from, who you've been in the ring, just anything, because all that, the announcers are there to help get the talent over.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember just as a fan watching that back in the day. that the way, I mean, notwithstanding your very TV ready presentation and your skills in the ring, the fact that they were handling you that way, it really planted the seed in the fans' mind that this guy's got something and he's got a future. You wrestled Kevin Sullivan a lot on television, it seems, and I'm familiar with Kevin, having booked him for my former company. He obviously must have asked to work you on television, correct?
I'm glad you brought that up. This is a great story. One of the stiffest guys I ever been in the ring with. Now, this is great. Kevin's the booker at the time, okay? And he's beating the crap out of me on these TV matches. So Terry Taylor, like I said, Terry and Paul were really proponents of mine. So I went to Terry. I said, Terry, is he mad at me or does he not like me? He goes, no, it's the opposite. He loves you. He wants to work with you. I said, he's killing me out there. And he goes, that's why he likes you, because you sell great and take bumps and make his stuff look great. I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking this is a hard way to earn a buck, but that's the story on that. Yeah, I did a lot of TVs with him, and he'd throw me out of the ring, and Jackie would pick me up and slam me, getting beat up in the ring. And he throws me out and getting beat up by her. And I'm thinking he's mad at me, right? He's the booker, so he's probably gonna get rid of me or something. And Terry told me no, it was the opposite. And then years later, I got hooked up with Kevin on the independents, and we became really good friends. Like you said, talked on the phone, and I'd see him at Fan Fest and stuff, and just got along great. I'm sorry he's not around anymore, because I miss talking to him at these WrestleCons and stuff like that. Because even a guy at my age and my level of experience, I could still sit with a guy like him and talk, and I could still learn something about how to do something just a little different and make the show better.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of years losing legends from him to Ole to Funk. Every time they're gone, and it's a sad day for the business. Aside from you had a good experience, I guess, with the politics in WCW. I guess generally speaking, and we don't really hear a lot about the locker room in WCW, aside from some of the chaotic nature of the center stage and then the Orlando tapings. A fan, though, wanted to know what was the quote unquote craziest thing you ever saw behind the scenes, be it a rib or whatever, in a WCW locker room.
We were at a syndicated TV taping in Orlando, and when you were the second or third match, you had to be on deck. So whatever match was out there, you had to be ready to go, or they'd come find you and you'd be in trouble. So whatever match I was on that day, I was on before a match which was Alex Wright and a guy named Hardbody Harrison. And I always go early because I don't want to be late. I go 2 matches on deck. So there's a match in the ring, and then Hardbody and Alex are on deck, and my match is after them. So I show up early, and they look like I can't hear what they're saying, but they're face to face. You're just probably going over the match they're about to do. And Hardbody has one of those spring thing with the hand that Mr. T used to work out with, where you bend it like that. And he made a motion like he was going to hit him with it, like it was a bat or something. And Alex just nailed him with one shot and dropped him. And I'm looking around like, is there a camera on here? Is this a pre-tape? And it was real. They apparently got into an argument, which you can't. Alex writes it's his match. If it Hardbody Harrison, or if I had matched with Alex, it's what he wants to do. And apparently they disagreed on it, and Hardbody threatened him and Alex just knocked him out. And I was the only one standing there. Me and maybe it was Jody Hamilton on a headset, but he didn't see anything. And I'm like, how the heck is this? So that was pretty wild. That was a real thing I saw. And they still went out there and did the match. I couldn't believe it. They were, when the match was in the ring was over with, they went out there. I was like, this is crazy. I hope. And so I never had anything. I've never had an argument with someone over how a match is going to go. Even to this day, if I go to an independent show, I just try to explain the guy that if he wants to do something that's really out there, I try to explain it. In my experience, this is just not logical hey, we're going to do it this way, and if you don't do it, I'm going to knock you out. It's just, I was trained to be a professional, And there's always a way to make a match. If someone's not comfortable with doing something, there's always something else you can do. There's a million other finishes you can do. If a guy isn't comfortable taking a move, do something else. So I never understood that. That's one of the only times I saw a dispute turn physical like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Hardbody Harrison, I guess, ended up going to prison for a very long time. Yeah,
Still
so
there,
that sounds on brand for him. Moving over to your work, syndicated work around mid '90s with WWF. I guess you were booked there to be on Raw and Superstars. How did that transpire? And were you of the view that they were going to really do something with you and push you?
This was the same period Scott D'Amore was doing that for them also. Man, what a heck of a deal this guy had at 20 years old. He was booking in. So I did them both for a little while. And I think I did 2 or 3 tours where it was a Raw and a Superstars taping. And WCW just seemed to take more of a liking to me personally and give me more bookings to where I wasn't going with Scott anymore. They were just dealing with me directly. So that's why WWF didn't really offer me more, anything full time and I wasn't ready anyway. And WCW just seemed to see more in me and had a lot more TV shows at the time, with those syndicated tapings out of Florida. So I was probably doing 6 or 8 shows a month even before I got the contract. Whereas WWF, they weren't, like I said, every area they went to, they used area specific guys, where WCW wanted me, even though I lived in New York, so
Mm-hmm.
that's all that was. I was a WWF kid, so I was ecstatic to be there wrestling Marty Jannetty, who I watched as a kid. I'm wrestling him on Monday Night Raw, and Lawler and McMahon are calling the match. I'm like, geez. And then the next day I go work my job at the movie theater, and some kid comes and goes, "Were you on wrestling last night?" I'm like, whoa, this is wild, right? But yep, I did them both there for that 1995, and just WCW they were the ones that liked me.
And a fan sent in a question because this match is on YouTube as well. You against Triple H. Did you have a good positive experience then? And was that in your when you're working him, knowing him, I guess to the extent that you did you think that he would end up being running the whole enchilada one day?
I don't think anyone could foresee that, but he was definitely a smooth worker at that point, 1995, and he had only been in it 3 or 4 years at that point. So I remember him being a real textbook good worker. But I also knew that Terry Taylor and Jody Hamilton worked with him a lot at WCW, and Terry became a mentor to me, and Jody did as well. So he had those really good working principles early on, and he was real smooth to work with. That TV match I had with him, I thought was really good. It was nothing crazy. The only thing I would say, that pedigree was a little rough. I think he had just started. He had only been doing it a short period of time. And there's a video I saw out there where he put a couple people on their heads. So I lucked out, I guess. My shoulder got a little wrenched on that, but I don't think it was anything intentional. I just think it was him getting used to doing that move, and obviously perfected it. It is really a simple move, but when you first start doing something and no one's, when I took that, I'd never taken that move before, so I just let him do it all, which is really all it was. But some people got that video. I saw a couple of guys went down, top heavy. I'm like, ooh, that's like jumping in a pool with no water, diving in. You know what I mean? So, but other than that, nope. He was a professional at that point, and he was kind of thin at that point. So I'm really surprised how much bulk he was able to fit on his on his frame. But man, he really filled out, and he already was the good worker, and then he had the look of a main eventer. So I think even without all that, well, he married Stephanie, he still had a really long, successful career. I think, even if that didn't happen.
I take it you probably had some cursory interactions with Vince McMahon, and being a fan growing up, et cetera, et cetera. You're well familiar with his creative. Do you think that the organization WWE, well, the new merger, the merge product, has suffered without Vince being there? And do you have any off the top of your head interactions with Vince that stand out? Because I heard he was always gracious to the guys that he brought in on for TV.
I think I had a bad timing issue when I got there in 2005. It was a lot different. Like with Edge and Christian that I broke in with were very good friends of mine. I got a lot of info from them from the late 90s. And he was a lot more approachable at that time. But by the time I got there, it was really, literally Stephanie McMahon was the head of creative. So you couldn't really talk to him too much. I had a couple quick conversations with him and I immediately got deferred to Stephanie. So he wasn't as hands-on as he was in the late 90s, where he was getting beat in the ratings by WCW. So he was more willing to take ideas from the talent. By the time I got there, they already had the whole business in the bag. So it's like, I go to talk to him and he wasn't nasty or anything like that. And he listened to an idea that I had, but he did that nod of the head with the expressionless face. So you don't know. And he's like, well, talk to Stephanie about that. And I was like, that was the gist of my interaction with him, and I don't take it personally at all. It's like going to the, when I go to Steve Jobs and talk to him about, I wasn't at that level. If he was involved in anything at that point, it was the tippity top stuff, and it just, he's looking eye to eye with me. Not, if I was 7 foot tall or something, I would have got more attention. But that timing, it just wasn't good timing for me to be there. And then that's all there is to it. As far as him not being involved anymore, I don't know what else he can do that he hadn't already done. You know what I mean? I don't know that, and it's no slight against him. I mean, look at everything he did for 30 years. Eventually, like Vern Gagne, he run out of ideas. All these, eventually, just what else do you do? And that's now you got all the creative, bring people from Hollywood and see if they got an idea. I think the top guys like Punk and them, they can still make suggestions and they make good sense and work. Sure. Why not? A good idea is a good idea, no matter who it comes from. So try. Everyone should try. Even if you're a guy there working now and you can't get it, man, you sitting there not saying nothing will get you nothing for sure. So you definitely got to try.
Now, you really hit a career renaissance, in all ways when you started with ECW about 2000. How did you get booked there, and what did you think when you first dealt with Paul Heyman and the state of the company at that time?
Well, towards the end of my WCW run there in late '99, I was like a lot of young talents. You get frustrated with, how am I going to get any higher here? It was just the NWO was still strong, Goldberg, and then underneath that you had Benoit. It was hard to position upwards there. And I listened to some people, Raven and DDP talked to me a lot, and they're like, you've been here a few years, maybe, and you can stay, but you're probably going to stay at this position. You could do more. You got more potential. Maybe you should go somewhere else. Well, there's only, as far as I was concerned, one other place, which was WWF. I never considered ECW because while I watched their show, because back then we watched everything, I was like, this stuff's unbelievable, but I don't work like that. I don't do the tables and the chairs and the blood and the barbed wire and all this. I just wasn't trained for that. That wasn't my, some guys could adapt to that, but I knew 100% that wasn't me. So when I left WCW, I thought that through my friendship with Edge and Christian at the time, and they said, hey, listen, we'll do whatever we can for you. And, so I thought I would get an opportunity there. And I had a couple tryouts. And while it was positive, there was no offer made. And that's like, well, where do I go now? There's only go back to WCW and beg for my job back. That's not going to work. And that's when Raven was a friend of mine. I'd see him at the gym in Atlanta. Yeah, why don't you call Paul E? You know what I mean? And I was like, that's just not. He's like, no, you could go in there because of what you're thinking. You're a WCW, WWF style wrestler, which the fans hate in ECW. You'll get heat just for being what you are. He goes, well, I'll talk to Paulie for you. And I ended up getting a tryout. And I didn't really think much was going to come of it. But he said, listen, I'm going to book you night by night, see how it goes. Not a whole lot of pay at that point, but I was working for an opportunity. And I got good reactions from the crowds right away, which I was surprised with. And I think Paul kind of suspected it would be that way, and it reinforced it to him. Next thing you know, I'm in the tag team with Simon Diamond, and man, they're getting behind us. And I'm first. That's the first time I'm getting what you call a push, and that's what I was there for. Either I was going to stay with them and move to the top, or I was going to go back with WCW or go on to WWF, because that's when the Dudleys and Taz and everybody were going from ECW and making a big career somewhere, either WWF or even Sandman went to WCW and was making $250,000. So ECW was a real launching pad. And I still was able to work the way I worked and didn't have to do the blood and guts, which I was just not good at. It wasn't my style. So Paul was a smart booker. He used people to their strengths, and I was cast as a traditional wrestler, which was a heel in ECW. And before Balls Mahoney could hit me with a chair, I was out of there. You know what I mean? Like, you're not landing this stuff, and that'd just get me more heat. So it really worked out. I needed a little more time there when the buyouts happened in 2001. They were just getting ready to split us up, and I was told I was going to be featured as a singles, and I needed a little more time with that, and it nothing you could do, right?
Yeah, I was going to, of course, ask you about your team with Simon Diamond and those great vignettes that they had you do. The chemistry was there, in and out of the ring. Was that something that organically came together? And who would you list as your favorite in-ring opponents? I think you guys wrestled the Baldies. Am I correct there?
Yeah, we wrestled all the teams, and the way that tag team came about was a lucky break too. And I'd never met Simon Diamond before, but I watched him work, and I'm like, okay, this guy is someone I should either be working against or with. And one night we were at a TV taping in Atlanta, and Dreamer said, "Look, you got Dusty's here with two of his students. You and Simon Diamond can tag up and go against them, or you can wrestle each other." And we both looked at each other. Well, we're both heels, so you know what? So Dusty's going to be watching this match for sure. So let's tag up. And then right off the bat, our styles just matched, and we had a good match with two of Dusty's guys that night. But when Dreamer came up to us afterwards, said, "Think about a promo and go shoot it." He didn't give us any other kind of instruction. And between me and Simon Diamond, we came up with a pretty creative promo. I thought it was in the bathroom or whatever.
Yeah,
He thought it was great, and that's when we made us a team and said we're gonna go with you guys. We're gonna run you guys. So that's how that all, just a stroke of luck. And to this day, one of my best friends, and kind of like my wrestling therapist. When I get kind of frustrated with stuff, I call him. He was always the laid back one, because back then I've been, why are they doing this? Why did he say this? And they're doing that. Yeah, just calm down. So we still have that same relationship, and he's still involved in wrestling with NWA and Billy Corgan's. He's like I call him the JJ Dillon of NWA. So that's how that came about. And I wish, like I said, I wish it could have lasted longer. I needed a little more time there to establish myself as a single star. I think I would have had a really good position if ECW would have continued.
Were you surprised when the company went out of business with all the the chicanery with the TNN deal not going the way that they wanted to, and then Paul supposedly shopping, and then for another one, and then boom, it was done? Was that a shock to you as well?
It was and it wasn't. We thought it was strange that Paul had stopped coming to TV tapings, but if you were at the shows, all the crowds were the biggest crowds the company ever did. We had 6,000 people in Chicago, Toronto, LA. So you didn't think, well, it's not going to go out of business. It might go dark for a little while because we're drawing crowds. How does something stop that's drawing crowds? Well, we didn't know what the behind the scenes business and the debts, or came out later that Vince was, but all this, we didn't know. All we knew was, well, if we're drawing big crowds, it's going to keep going. We just might be off TV for a little while. And we never heard the words, we're closing or we're going out of business. It just stopped running show. It stopped doing bookings. We did that pay-per-view in January of 2001. And that was the last real show. They booked 2 house shows a few weeks after that. And then there was nothing in February. And there was no schedule. There was no, and I wasn't under contract. So I called Terry Taylor. I said, I don't know what I'm doing with these guys. And he goes, well, I'll talk to Johnny Laurinaitis, was running WCW at the time, to see if we can get you back in here. And that's when I went in and did a Nitro and a Thunder. All the while, ECW was still up in the air. And I called Paul. I said, what do I do? He goes, take any booking you can get. But he didn't give me any information if we're coming back or nothing. And then a month after I did the WCW shots, I'm doing a tryout match in Cleveland for WWF at Raw, and that was the night of the simulcast where Shane was, and I'm like, oh, yeah, there was no tip off of that either, so it all just went crumbling down at the same exact time, and that was a rough period, that 2001 till the Jarrett started TNA. It wasn't looking good for a lot of people that were still viable talent.
Yeah, heard that from many guys, unfortunately. Heads of Machine is asking, any memories of wrestling in Buffalo? He remembers your dark match on Nitro versus Hoovy, and had a win at the Elio DePaulo Memorial Show versus Evan Courageous, another WCW dude.
Now that's a fan right there. Absolutely. They knew Buffalo was my hometown. So I wasn't booked for that Nitro, but somebody added me to it, and it was supposed to be a TV match, but everyone knows a lot of that stuff gets changed. But they knew I was going to have a lot of people there to see me, which I still think is really professional of WCW. They get a lot of flack for, oh, Eric didn't know what he was doing. Blah, blah. I was like, no, I was there. They knew there was I did some local publicity for that, so they made sure I had a match on the show. And I remember it being a pretty good match with Hoovy. He was always a great guy to wrestle. And that was a packed crowd. And then the Evan Courageous match, that was actually a house show. And I got to do a really cool house show loop there in my home area. I was there, Syracuse and Rochester, I think. And that was a fun match. They let me look good in that. Got my hand raised in my hometown in front of a full arena. So that was a pretty cool memory. And Evan was easy at the time. It was before he got that 3 count, and he was just happy to be there and make a good match. And he put me over, and I appreciated it. And it's definitely good memories. Always to wrestle in your hometown. There's nothing like that, whether you're a heel or a baby face. It brings you back to when you first started dreaming about doing that. That's what you dream about doing, is doing the big time in front of your family and friends, your hometown.
Mm-hmm. Now, after ECW closed, WCW closed, you did some work with a couple of promotions that had a real buzz about them at the time. XWF in Orlando, and then World Wrestling All Stars, that McMahon promotion, I guess, based out of Australia at the time. Both of those companies really had high expectations, and it seemed like they were being presented as a competitor or an alternative in that void that was created. What did you think when you did the work with those companies, and were you surprised that they really never got off the ground?
I am. That XWF really looked like it was going to be the continuation of WCW, because anybody that was anybody name-wise was at those TV tapings in Orlando. And Jimmy Hart was always another big backer of mine in WCW. He's, oh, baby, we're glad to have you here, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Jimmy is the most positive guy ever. So me and Simon Diamond were thinking, oh, man, this is going to be great. And we did those TV tapings, and Kid Cash was our friend from ECW, and he was involved in the ring and in the office. And he pulled us aside. He goes, Kid Cash says to me and Simon, he goes, you guys are going to talk to Jimmy Hart about a contract. Make sure you shoot high. And we're like, whoa, this is going to be great. And then, man, it was over before it even got started. The rumor was they spent way too much money right off the bat. Because if you remember, Hulk Hogan was there, Jerry Lawler, Sable, Roddy Piper, not just ECW guys, like big time WWF, Mr. Perfect,
Perfect.
Bobby Heenan was there. Anyone you could think of. So, okay, well, that makes sense. They spent so much money on those initial tapings that it cut it off before it had a chance. But we really did think it was going to be, we weren't going to miss a beat. And then after that, the WWA tours came up. They were international tours to Europe, and we did Australia and New Zealand. That didn't look like it was going to become a full-time, but it looked like it was going to become a regular overseas with pay-per-view exposure that would keep you notable and keep you relevant so that you could still do independence until, maybe you can get it with the new WWE, WCW, whatever they were going to, it was going to expand. Maybe it was a place to be until you get picked up by McMahon,
And fortunately, TNA came into being. You signed with them in 2003. I think a really underrated era of TNA and actually wrestling in general was that period of time at the Nashville Fairgrounds where you were involved again in a program with Simon Diamond against America's Most Wanted. Some real burner tag team matches. The TNA thing for you came about as a result of what?
Exactly what you just said. They were sitting in a booking meeting in America's Most Wanted, were the tag team champions and didn't have anyone. They had already wrestled everyone. They couldn't. And then Scott D'Amore was, this guy's my whole career. He's just always in the right place. And he goes, what about Simon and Swinger to Jeff Jarrett? And he goes, well, you know what? They had a good run in ECW. Let's try it out. And they brought us in for one match, and Storm and Harris, we'd never met them before, and they were gracious, and they said, let's put on the best match we can. They could have just said, hey, listen, guys, we're the stars here, and you guys are here to put us over. But they didn't do that. They made a heck of a match with us, and it was good enough that when we got to the back, Jeff asked us if we were available the next week, and we're like, we'll be here. And then before you knew it, we were enthralled in an angle with these guys, and it was one of the high points of the show. 6 weeks later, we're the champions, and they're offering us contracts. It's just, you just have no idea when something like that's going to pop up. You just got to, I think the theme, the gentleman earlier asked about my autobiography is, I was always ready. I'm always in shape. I got my outfits. There's no, oh man, I'm always ready for a spot. And you just have to be, because you never know when they're going to call you.
In terms of the ECW reunion shows that were a real thing for a while, you did one, the TNA Hard Justice pay-per-view that some of the critics didn't like. I personally thought it was great. What are your thoughts on the continued ECW revival attempts and the fact that it seemed that the WWE version of ECW, a lot of the folks that I've had the pleasure of interviewing have said that was a hit job on the spirit of the original ECW, but it doesn't seem to have worked. What are your thoughts on the continuing nostalgia for ECW, the original ECW?
I think any exposure is good exposure. And I thought that Hard Justice pay-per-view was a success from being there and seeing how the show went. And Dreamer was in charge of the whole thing. And all those guys, they know what to do. You didn't really need to plan out a whole lot. And most of those people were still viable at the time. And even to this day, for someone like me, where I couldn't get in the NWO, but I was in ECW, and people are still talking about that to this day. And you can't be in it anymore. So it's a novelty. If you were there, if you were on that team in 2000, that was the last team. There was no, I know they brought it back in 2005 and 6, but that wasn't the same. That's not the original, right? So we were part of the original, and there'll always be, people come up to my table at independent shows and they go, do you got any ECW pictures? I'm like, my gosh, that was 25 years ago. You don't want my TNA Impact stuff I just did? Oh, we like the old stuff. And I'm like, well, I appreciate you. It all goes together and creates a package. So I think that ECW, it's a positive thing forever. If you're in there, the Baldies, all those guys, Danny Dorn, Roadkill, the Dudleys came in and wrestled us when they were already on WWF. We sold out that Queens. They let them come down and wrestle us. That was huge. Bubba told me that was the biggest gate ECW ever did at that one show that we wrestled them in the main event. So
In the Hammerstein?
no, that was at the Elks Lodge in Queens.
Oh, Elks Lodge.
Just because the tickets were so much, I guess, and they jammed every person they could in there. Those Hammerstein shows were always sold out. Yeah, anything in New York City is a big market for not just the people always think of the Garden for WWF, but it was an ECW hotbed too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Antonio is asking, similar to the the question about WCW. This might be interesting. Do you have any funny or crazy stories from ECW, be it a rib nature or something along the lines of backstage, not in the ring, maybe in the ring?
Just seeing the Sandman in the dressing room with these bottles of vodka laying there and him putting it away before. Now, I know he didn't go out there and do a traditional wrestling match, but I don't know how the heck he functioned. And I never seen him hurt anybody, with that stick. You would think, but man, he was so hammered before. But it's like Motley Crue. They play better when they're smashed. You know what I mean? That was just the gimmick. And just these characters like Balls Mahoney walking around, and I'm like thinking to myself, how did I end up? How did I end up in this thing? You know what I mean? But everybody had their place there, and everyone was different. Everyone wasn't doing the same spots and the same moves. We still paid attention. Like, okay, Raven does the DDT. No one's doing a DDT. We all protected each other's gimmick and moves so that we could stand out and everyone could be different. I think maybe that's something of today guys could pay more attention to, is watch what everyone else is doing and do something different, and you'll stand out.
Amen. Amen. You came back to TNA a couple of years ago, and you had this really entertaining gimmick as a out of touch 80s wrestler, and the fans really love it. And I got a bunch of questions about how you developed that. What was the inspiration for the whole retro deal?
It wasn't a gimmick. That's finally the real me who's coming out. And that's what Scott Demore said. He goes, the way you act in the locker room, that's what I want on camera times 10. So I pulled out the boogie woogie and the honky tonk man, and just riding in vans with Bundy and Neidhart and all these wild characters from when I was a kid, and just say the most obnoxious thing, and it doesn't have to make any sense. So there's no pressure. You can just we had a guy named Willie Mack who is a great talent, and he's one of the first guys that I worked with when I got in there, and he summed up my gimmick in one word: fool. You're a fool. Just act like a. So I just did more and more, and whoever I came in contact with, I just tried to make the biggest fool of myself that I possibly could. I was the butt of the joke, and that's what I thought I could do, because there's a lot of guys in wrestling that are really funny. There's guys like Mick Foley that can hold a stand-up comedy show. That's not me. I can be funny in the wrestling sense and making a fool of myself and making that entertaining. So it's I'm not Kevin Nash funny. I'm, I think something's really cool, but it's not. So it's funny. That was the whole gist of that.
Well, it certainly is. It's provided some memorable television, really, a reinvention, so to speak, along the lines of almost Chris Jericho-esque. In terms of one other fan question that was sent to me, you mentioned several times that you're good friends with Edge and Christian. What do you think of the real massive success that they've had in AEW? I personally saw last year in Toronto their Falls Count Anywhere match, and that stands up with any of the Falls Count Anywhere matches I've personally seen. They've really kicked it up a notch, despite like the rest of us getting up there in age. Do you think that it appears that they're going to be back together in a tag situation? Do you think that was that surprising, that even though they're not the rookies or the youngsters, that they're really tearing it up in AEW and one of the bright spots?
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, the training that we all had, nothing could compare to that. So nothing's too hard for us. We can, and I'm not surprised that those guys are still in a main event role. They had superstar roles in the WWF/E. So that'll carry you a long way. But if you can still go in the ring and perform at a main event level, that's what really puts it over the top. They're not looking at these guys, man, these guys should hang it up or something. So they're still compelling people to watch then. But no, I'm not surprised that they're still working. They're older than I am, but they got the mentality and the skill. And if you can walk out there, you can make something of it. Everybody's got it. You can't do this for 30 years and not have injuries. And those two guys got a lot more injuries than I did, because I never went up the ladder or anything like that stuff with the chairs and stuff. But they took a lot of big bumps. But it's about keeping yourself in condition, and we were all trained to do that. So I think that's why we're all. And Jericho came out of the dungeon in Calgary. So when you get brought in the toughest way possible, you can always go back and draw upon that. I can drive to any town, and the fact that I can pull off at a gas station, that's huge. As I think back to when we're in the Arctic, like, guys, it's gonna be another 8 hours before we see civilization. So it's all about your mindset, and those guys are all still main event draws, and my hat's off to them, or my bandana, whatever you want to say. But I saw Ron Hutchison a couple months ago when we did the show in Toronto, and he couldn't be prouder of all of us. And look, we're all still doing it. So what you did worked. You broke us in the right way. You trained us to be what we wanted to be, which is be professionals for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. With the relationship between WWE and TNA, the talent exchanges, the cross promotion, I'm reading that AJ Styles is going to be back for Slammiversary tonight. If you're watching this on July 20th, that's a big deal. Do you see TNA becoming a full-fledged subsidiary of WWE, and do you think that would hurt some of the independence of the product that brought so many great moments, or is it going to be a net positive if and when it does happen?
I think any rub you can get from WWE is positive for them. I just saw Moose a couple months ago on a show. He said their crowds are bigger than ever. So I haven't heard anything. Everything I've heard is positive. I wish there was going on when I was there. So it's always that timing thing, but not everything always works out. But I think it's a positive thing. If they're drawing bigger crowds and they got more eyes on them, that's what it's all about. And I think it's in WWE's benefit too. They can send people over there to get experience in front of television cameras without being on their show every week. It's almost like a chance to send them somewhere else without those territories. The more opportunities like that to send people out and get them the best experience you can get, which is in front of a live crowd and a TV and a pay-per-view. I think it's a win-win for both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Back, it seems like things have come full circle for you with again Scott D'Amore starting off, working for him in Border City, and now the Canadian scene is excited because of the new Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling company. Put on some very successful events, loaded roster, including yourself. At this stage of the game, do you have goals for yourself in that company, or what would you like to see that company become?
I'd like to see it become a full-time. I think it can become a full-time, even territory, so to speak, throughout Canada. It's definitely a Canadian product, and the benefit to that is Canada is getting behind it. When I did that last year, they got billboards in downtown Toronto. And they did that all the way back to the 80s. People go, why did Vince run the WWF TV tapings in Canada? Because Canadian content, they push it. The country will get behind it. You know what I mean? So There's no other Canadian wrestling TV product that I know of, so that could be. I think that'll be the one. And the guy that's running it's got all the experience. Scott's been producing TV since he was a teenager, so he's the right guy in charge, and he's got more experience at doing that and interacting with all the talent than anybody else. So I can see that going full time. I hope he keeps me on board. I've been on since the first show there, and it's pay-per-view based now, but I can definitely see it turning into a regular TV organization, and even with some live events. I mean, Canada's a big country, and I don't think WWE and AEW, they go there, but not as often as WWF used to back in the day. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to be the wrestling product in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Well, although there's a lot of independent promotions, there seems to be a void in terms of that next level deal. And with Scott D'Amore and the talent that he has, certainly there definitely is an opportunity to expand. Last fan question, and again, it has to do with your forthcoming, hopefully, autobiography, as he asked here, but he asked a follow-up. If you do a book, who would you choose to do the foreword?
Man, that's hard because I got so many great friends. Probably Simon Diamond. He's probably my closest friend, and tied with Rhino, and you know what I mean? Just so many of these guys that I made great friendships with. I would actually have multiple people. Barry Horowitz, a great friend of mine, going back to WCW, and we just spoke on the phone today. He says hello, Jack. By the way, he's a big fan of
great guy
the show, and just so many great people that I got to work with over the years and become friends with. It'd be hard to say just one. Like I said, Terry Taylor, who's still coaching the young guys down at NXT, he probably taught me more about what to do in the ring than anybody else. But so many people that have passed away, like Dusty, and just so many people I had a chance to be around. So I think I could write a book just on the people that helped me all these years. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we'll certainly keep an eye out for that, and keep in touch, and maybe have you back to talk about it. But where can the fans find you on the social medias, websites, so they can keep up with everything that Johnny Swinger is up to?
Well, of course, I'm on Facebook as Johnny Swinger, and also my real name, Joe Dorgan. I'm on Instagram, Johnny_Swinger. X, the former Twitter, at Swinger_Johnny. I'm on Cameo. I'm on. I'm out there, man. I'm easy to find. So, and I'm glad to do anything involved with the professional wrestling industry. That's what I signed up for when I was very young, and I'm a lifer. So, whether it's an autobiography, maybe my first full-size action figure, I'm looking for. Maybe someone to be willing to invest in that, contact me. I know there's a lot of independent companies out there doing those now, so that'd be cool to get that. My kids are a little old for that now, but they'd still think it's something to talk about. But yeah, I'm still out there. I'm still wrestling on the weekends. I'll be at WrestleCon at SummerSlam in Newark, and I'm doing more and more of those every year, and I'm glad that they want to have me at those. I appreciate people thinking of me for those, that I made it to a point where they would want me to attend those. So I hope I get to keep doing those, and and stay in it as long as I can. It's not a matter of do I want to, how long do they want me to? That's when I'll be there for that.
Well, man, it was great to interview you again. We'll certainly keep in touch, and appreciate you coming on the Cheap Heat Productions podcast tonight. Want to encourage the fans to check out everything Johnny Swinger, and he's interested in some ventures. So if you're watching this, be sure to give him a shout. But thanks for coming on again, sir.
Yes, sir. My pleasure, Jack. Anytime.
That's it for this edition of the Cheap Heat Productions flagship show. Be sure to like us on social media and like this video and hit the notification button, because I know you've subscribed and you won't miss any of our great content. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Cheap Heat Productions. Don't forget to hit the notification